14.2 is a small patch, but it brings huge changes. Firstly, there's 3 huge reworks to Kayle, Karthus, and Urgot. These reworks are mostly huge buffs to Kayle and Urgot, but for Karthus it's mostly a nerf. But speaking of nerfs, Disco, TF, Riven, Yone, Vex, and Yasuo are all seeing small nerfs, but the biggest nerf is to Twin Terror. But this patch isn't all doom and gloom. There's a new randoms cosmetics button and a new Sona chibi, and there's small buffs to Ezreal, Corki, Headliner Kai'Sa, Katarina, Lulu, Kennen, and Lilia. There's also huge buffs to Jinx, Punk, but there's also a lot of buffs to Mosher, which makes me wonder, are we about to see the return of everyone's favorite top laner?
Surprise! I'm back.
Uh-oh. But how will Karthus' best-in-slot items change after his massive rework? Which comps are going to be much stronger in the next patch? And will the meta flip with this patch? But before we get into that, remember to subscribe. So let's start off with the reworks, and the biggest one of them all, which is the rework to Karthus. Now, I actually explained everything you need to know about Karthus' rework on stream, so I'll just play the clip from stream.
New Karthus works in a way that the more crit chance he has, the more AP he gets. This rework is intended to nerf his AP scaling. What they're doing is they're nerfing his damage by 35%. This is a 35% nerf across the board, even at 3-star. But Karthus itemization has changed, where now he doesn't want AP as much. AP isn't that good on Karthus, so you don't even want to be stacking like Rabadon plus Archangels. This is common. This because his AP scaling was so high that Rabadon Archangel was really good in Karthus. Now that's no longer the case. Rabadon's Archangel is actually pretty bad. Now Karthus' best in slot will be Shojin, Dual Gauntlet, and then +1 mana item. I think it's JAX and then these 2 items, because this item gives Karthus 10% crit damage, and then it gives him loads of AP for his passive now. So it gives him 70 AP, which is way more than everything else. So you go Dual Gauntlet for 70 AP plus 10% more crit damage. Then you go Shojin, so he casts more and scales well with Pentakill. And then JAX so he casts even more as well. Because one thing as well, he gains AP from casting more. So the more he casts, the more AP he gets. And through Pentakill, the more damage amp he gets as well. So the best in slot now will be just Shojin, Dual Gauntlet, JAX. Specifically that. And that means as well, you never play Superfan Karthus. Superfan Karthus, specifically like Headliner Karthus. In fact, your chosen should always be Mordekaiser. If you're playing Superfan Karthus, your chosen is Mordekaiser or Viego. This is not Karthus, because his Superfan item is Archangels, and you don't want Archangels. Archangels are bad for Karthus. You take Mordekaiser, you take Viego, you make these items, you're chilling. One thing as well to bear in mind, Executioner is really bad for Karthus. It's really bad. Because the problem is this is capped. This is a cap. This is capped at 100%, because you can't get more than 100% crit chance. Thank you, being informative, buddy. No problem. But the max AP he can get from his passive is 100. That's okay, that's not bad. 100 AP, that's quite a lot of AP. But the problem is when you realize that he gains the Executioner, Karthus gains the Executioner crit chance based on the target he's currently autoing. So let's say there's a tank here, let's say it's Echo, and it's 100% HP, and Karthus starts casting. Karthus is going to do no damage to this Echo, right? Because it's 100% HP. So that means Karthus will stay at 25% crit chance, because he's getting no benefit from Executioner whatsoever. So that means that if you're going vertical Executioner Karthus, it's bad, because he's gaining the crit chance based on who is currently autoing. So it's incredibly inconsistent. Like, Executioner Karthus is extremely inconsistent. They're nerfing Pentakill Karthus 100% with this change. Specifically Superfan Pentakills Karthus, actually. But they're also turbo, by accident I think, they're also turbo nerfing Executioner Karthus, which didn't exist in the first place, but now it doesn't exist at all. Executioner Karthus just isn't a thing in next patch. It won't be. It can't be. It's just too bad. I mean, maybe that's a player diff. It could actually be a player diff. Maybe actual good players can find a way to play Executioner Karthus, but I think it's bad. I think it's awful. Because the crit chance is so inconsistent. And because of this passive, anything above 100% crit chance is wasted. He doesn't get the AP. He just gets the crit damage, which is a 2-to-1 ratio, which isn't that great. It is a lot of crit damage, don't get me wrong, but you get more value by going Dual Gauntlet and Vertical Pentakill. You just get more value.
But to sum it up, Karthus is best in slot with both Shojin, Dual Gauntlet, and Jaksho. If you want an in-depth explanation as to why you build Jaksho over another Shojin, then check the comments because I'll leave a detailed description there. I don't really want to spend the entire video talking about Karthus. But you only play Vertical Pentakill Karthus now and not Vertical Executioner, and now the correct way to play Superfan Pentakill is to never click Headliner Karthus, and instead you always take Pentakill Mordekaiser, Edgelord, or Pentakill Viego, and I actually think the same is true for the newly reworked Kayle. This rework to Kayle makes her a complete monster because she almost has no downtime whatsoever. And with the free Rage Blade with Superfan, you don't even need to fully commit to Kayle, as you can still easily play around Kayle in the mid game and pivot to Mordekaiser or Viego if you don't hit. So this Kayle rework does in turn make Pentakill Superfan much stronger because of how strong Kayle is, how easily she comes online, and how effortless it is to pivot away from her. But now let's move on to the last rework, which is to Urgot. Now while Urgot has lower AD scalings, his single target damage is significantly higher because now he has a 50% damage amp if he only hits one target. But with this rework to Urgot, there's also one buff to the Mosher trait, one buff to the Mosher augment which gives the Moshers very good stats, a buff to JAX, and an indirect buff to Vi since Punk is also seeing buffs. So considering there's so many buffs to Moshers, Moshers will become a meta comp, especially since Urgot, JAX, and Gnar scale extremely well with the bonus attack speed. So this leads me to believe that JAX will make a return in this patch, but he won't be Giga S tier like he was before. Still, keep your eye out for JAX and Urgot because they will be very relevant in this patch. But going back to Punk, both the trait and Jinx are getting very huge buffs. This base AD buff to Jinx may look small, but that gets substantially increased by Punk, Jinx's star level, and her items. So even though it just looks like 5 extra AD, once you include all the scalings, that's a lot of bonus AD Jinx will get now. So you should heavily consider playing Punk in 14.2, especially if you open with augments like Frequent Flyer or Return on Investment. But now let's talk about some of the unit nerfs. Some of the nerfs aren't really going to change much, but there are some that completely flip the meta. For example, the nerfs to Riven, Yone, and Yasuo slightly decrease their damage output, but not enough to change their comps, augments, or itemizations. Likewise, while Vex's CC duration is getting gutted and halved, her damage output is still just as insane, and her ult still has CC, which can still lock your units down. But even a small nerf can be enough of a ripple effect to completely drop a unit out of the meta. Like these disco nerfs, which don't really seem huge, but they can add up really quickly, and Twisted Fate's damage output won't be nearly as high as it was before. But Blitz will be just as tanky, so we can still stall for Twisted Fate to scale. So while disco won't be nearly as oppressive, it shouldn't completely drop out the meta. But what will drop out the meta is the Twitch Vex Twin Terror Executioner comp, because the Twin Terror augments will no longer give any crit chance. Now Twin Terror is very similar to Double Trouble and can be very useful for tanks. This opens up many more possible comps. For example, I played this Twin Terror Kai'Sa, Nico, and Echo on stream, and that went pretty well, honestly. But having said that, the Twin Terror augment will still be very good for the same comp with Vex and Twitch, but not nearly as disgusting as it was before. And that's because playing double Vex is still very strong due to their staggered CC and damage. Also, Last Stand is getting a much deserved nerf across the board to the stats it grants, which is good because this augment was insane, especially when you combine it with a trait like Heartsteel. And lastly, the gold generated by Goldmancer's staff is getting halved. Now this is really good because Goldmancer's staff was so strong. But now Goldmancer's staff should be around the same power level as the other gold granting artifacts. But of course, not everything is getting nerfed. There's also some buffs, like Good for Something 1, which has 5% more chance to drop gold. For units, all big shots bar Jhin and the big shot augment are seeing buffs, so that's Ezreal, Corki, Kai'Sa, and MF. There's also buffs to Lulu's third cast damage and a buff to the tankiness of some superfans. Now these buffs mean that the Lulu comp I made a video about will be stronger in the next patch, so make sure you check out that video so you can learn about the comp. But with so many buffs to big shots and superfans, this KDA Jazz board will also be significantly stronger next patch, so make sure you keep an eye out for this board. Lastly, Katarina is also getting some love. And I think that should cover most of it. This patch is intentionally small to avoid balanced thrashing, but also address some of the outliers of 14.1. And I think this patch does that very well, and I don't think the meta will drastically change like it did in the previous patch. In fact, I'm actually really happy to see so many reworks in this patch. Back when Riot announced that they're getting rid of mid-sets, I was concerned that problematic units would be left unaddressed for an entire set. But these reworks proved me wrong, and the TFT devs will still polish each set to perfection. So honestly, I've got nothing but praise for the TFT dev team for pulling this off. The only thing I'm concerned about is the reliability of superfans now, because a lot of the early game units that use superfan well are seeing buffs. But at this point, I should ask you guys what you think about these reworks. What do you think will become meta or fall out of the meta? Are you concerned about superfans? And why do I still hate Vex? But yeah, let me know in the comments and remember to subscribe and then join the Discord whilst you're at it. Check out these other videos if you want to see more from me, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.